Sometimes the biggest changes in how people treat you don't come from arguments or deep conversations. They come from these tiny moments you barely notice. Moments that feel harmless, but quietly set the tone for everything that happens after. And most people don't realize any of this is happening until the whole dynamic is already formed, long before they understand why someone treats them the way they do. And it's strange because people don't consciously try to test you, but it still happens. It's just a natural instinct. Humans form an impression of you before you even realize anything is going on. And without noticing, that impression starts shaping the way they decide to treat you. It feels small and unimportant in the moment, but that's usually where the whole dynamic begins. And you've probably had moments like that where nothing big happened, but something in the interaction still pulled your attention for a second. And what really matters in those situations isn't the moment itself, it's the way your reaction gives people a sense of who you are. They pick up on that without even trying, and it slowly shapes how they treat you from that point on. It's not about judging you or trying to control anything, it's just how people understand each other without having to say it out loud. What makes all of this even more confusing is that nobody teaches you this part of human behavior. You grow up thinking people treat you based on personality or closeness or how kind you are. But a huge part of it starts in those tiny moments you don't really think about. The moments where you quietly show someone what feels okay to you. Not because you say it, but because your reaction gives it away. Those little moments end up carrying more weight than anything you could explain out loud. And eventually you start wondering why people do this in the first place. And the answer is honestly pretty simple. People rely more on what feels real than on what they hear. They trust the pattern they see in you, the way you naturally show up, far more than anything you explain. Your reactions tell them more about you than your words ever could, so instead of asking who you are, they just watch. It happens quietly, and most of the time they don't even realize they're doing it. There's a simple psychological idea behind this. Humans pick up the tone of an interaction almost immediately, long before any real conversation starts. In those first moments, people get a sense of how you carry yourself and how you handle things, and what they pay the closest attention to is your reaction, because that's what reveals your boundaries and how you see yourself. And this is where it gets personal for a lot of people. There are times when you don't respond the way you wish you would, not because you lack confidence, but because you don't want things to get awkward or tense. Maybe you've learned that keeping things calm feels easier, or that staying quiet avoids unnecessary problems, or you just don't want someone misunderstanding what you meant. The tricky part is that people rarely see that as you trying to keep the peace. They often take it as you being fine with whatever just happened. People respond to whatever signals they think you're giving. When you don't show much of a reaction, they often assume you're comfortable with the moment and they shape their behavior around that. It's usually not about taking advantage of you. It's just the conclusion they draw based on what they see. The good thing is that passing these small tests doesn't mean you have to be harsh or confrontational. You don't need a big reaction at all. Most of it is just staying steady when something doesn't sit right with you and letting that steady energy speak for itself. It's the kind of presence where you're aware of what happened, but you don't shrink yourself or adjust to make the moment easier for someone else. That calm confidence usually says more than anything you could explain. And what's interesting is that these moments tend to be small, but they still leave an impression. People test you in subtle ways just to see how you carry yourself, and they pay attention to whether you hold your ground or immediately adjust yourself to fit the moment. Staying steady doesn't make you distant. It just means you're not reshaping yourself to make things easier for someone else. It keeps the interaction honest without you over-accommodating. When you actually understand all this, something deeper starts to stand out. These moments don't just reveal how other people see you, they reveal how you see yourself. Because your reaction in these small situations usually comes from the relationship you have with yourself long before it has anything to do with the other person. If you trust your gut, you respond one way. If you doubt yourself, you respond another way. The test isn't really between you and them. It's between you and the version of you that shows up in that moment. And that's what people don't realize. These little tests aren't really about power or respect on the outside. They're about clarity on the inside. They show you where you're still trying to earn your place in a room and where you already feel like you belong. They reveal the parts of you that still try to be agreeable out of habit and the parts of you that are finally tired of disappearing to keep things smooth. They expose the places where you haven't fully backed yourself yet. And the more you understand this, the more you realize these moments aren't about having a strategy. They're about being honest with yourself. Honest about when something doesn't feel right or when you're shrinking without noticing. Once you acknowledge that, your presence shifts on its own and people feel it instantly. The real change happens when you stop seeing these moments as threats and start seeing them as reflections. They show you where you've grown and where old habits still show up. It can be uncomfortable, but it's also what helps you move forward. And the interesting part is, once you carry yourself with that kind of steadiness, you actually face fewer tests. People sense when someone knows who they are, and they naturally adjust to that, not because you demand it, but because your energy no longer signals uncertainty. That's the quiet power in all this. When one of those moments shows up, don't rush to smooth it over. Just stay present for a second and be honest with yourself about how it feels. You don't need a big reaction, but you also don't need to make yourself smaller. These moments aren't about proving anything to anyone else. They're about not not abandoning yourself. And when you hold that, people adjust to it without you forcing a thing.